Now we're ready to start working with the layers window. This is probably the most important aspect of Photoshop. This is what truly separates it from programs like MS Paint. All the images being edited in the program exist in layers. From this window you can control them and alter them in many ways. There are a few things you should remember about layers. All layers will have the exact same sized canvas, so don't worry about them getting skewed or sized wrong once the picture saves. Also, you should remember that what your pictures look like in your project is how they will look whenever you save it in the end. So if they don't look right here, then they're not going to look right once your project is saved. By going down to the folding icon right here, you can create new layers, and you can create as many as you want. And it's sometimes good to have more layers than you necessarily need, because that means when you're editing something and you mess up and you have to completely get rid of something, you only have to get rid of that layer and not the rest of your project. Of course, you don't want to go overboard and have like 30 layers, because then it really starts to become confusing, and even I get confused when I have that many layers. You can delete your layers by hitting the trash can icon, like I just used earlier. You can adjust the opacity of a layer by clicking on the layer, going up to opacity, and reducing the percentage. That makes things more transparent, and it's useful for certain effects. You can adjust the order of your layers by moving them around. See, now Mario is on top, now the mushroom is on top, and whatever is on top here is going to be on top in your project. Think of it as having pictures on sheets of glass, and you stack them on top of each other, and certain pictures will cover up the ones below it. That's how it works with layers in Photoshop. The last icon you should be familiar with is the effects icon, which is this F down here. We will go into all the different effects later on in this video. Now that you have a solid grasp of the layers window, let's move on to the tools. Now you may be asking me, Christian, how are we going to cover all of the tools here? Well, don't worry, we aren't actually going to cover every single tool, just the ones that matter. But then you may be wondering, why am I skipping these tools? Aren't you going to have to use them? Well, actually you won't, for a few reasons. Number one, the functions of some of these tools are only used in more advanced techniques. Number two, I personally don't use them, and thus I don't find them necessary in this tutorial. Number three, if you're shooting to create stuff like this, you don't need them, so don't worry. The first tool you should be familiar with is your moving tool, which is this tool right here. With this tool, you can shift your objects around. While using this tool, if you hit Ctrl-T, you can resize your object. By holding Shift, it will constrain proportions and make sure it doesn't get messed up. While we are on the topic of quick keys, it should be noted that there are other quick keys that you need to remember. Ctrl-C copies, Ctrl-V pastes, and Ctrl-X cuts. With an Apple computer, the Apple key is used instead of the Control key. Also, if you want to undo something, hit Ctrl-Alt-Z. And if you're on Apple, it's Apple Ctrl-Z. The next three tools are your selection tools. When area selected is surrounded by blinking lines. When an area is selected, you cannot adjust anything outside that area. You can do many things with a selection. You can delete it by hitting the delete button. You can move it around by using the move tool. And also, you can copy or paste it. Also, one nifty trick you'll find is that you can give a selection its own layer by making a layer and right-clicking, selecting layer via copy or layer via cut. With copy, it makes a duplicate of the image and gives it its own layer. With cut, it removes it from this layer and basically throws it into its own layer. For an example of how to use this for such a goal, I'm going to take Mario's hand and make it look like it's behind the mushroom while his head still stays in front of it. So I've selected his arm, I go to layer via cut, and then I move it behind the mushroom. And now this doesn't look perfect because I did this very quickly, but if you do it right, you can really create more diversity with your layers. So things aren't all on top of each other, they can be partially behind each other or partially in front of each other, and it gives it a more realistic feel.